Zvika Klein, shalom.
Hi, Yoni.
Editor-in-Chief, Jerusalem Post. So you were interrogated by the police. First of all, a few words about the interrogation, what you went through, the experience.
So basically, I was asking for questioning at the beginning, basically to give information about what is called "quote unquote" Qatar Gate, claims of connections between people who work with the prime minister and supposedly or whatever claimed to be paid by, connected to Qatar.
This is following a report, a story.
So basically,
story
right?
you did in Qatar.
Yeah. So a year ago, exactly in April 2024, I went to Qatar. I was invited by the government there, and I wrote two articles about it. Published it in the Jerusalem Post. In order to keep objectivity, we had at least two articles. I kind of brought their take, and then we brought two articles, bashing them.
It's not surprising when you're interviewing Qatari officials, you're bringing their story.
100%. That's the way I see journalism. And even the week later, actually, interestingly, we had a columnist who published a column tearing me to pieces. And my staff was like, "We shouldn't publish this." I was like, "We should publish it because we're a newspaper. We're not, no one bought us, no one paid us, no one, whatever. Like we do what we think is right and we think is objective as much as possible."
So just recently you understood, or you saw the bigger picture? You started connecting the dots?
So this is it's a lot more of a complicated story, but basically people who I was in touch with regarding this trip, but also in general, like there were other items that had to do with Qatar that had to do with this. Some of them either were at the time working with the prime minister, or in the past were working with the prime minister. Were people totally frank about who they're representing and what they were, if they were actually
interest behind
exactly.
motives.
And now, obviously, everyone, like we are as journalists, we're vessels for delivering information, and everyone will be. People use us, quote unquote, and we use people, right? It doesn't sound amazing, but basically meaning everyone has an interest, whether it is a publicist, a lobbyist, people, politicians. They want to get their message across, right? So that's kind of what happened. And basically, and I was interrogated about being in relation with those people.
So it began as a questioning,
right?
And then it became an interrogation. You became a suspect.
Mm-hmm.
How do you look at that in terms of freedom of speech, freedom of speech, of journalism?
It was very difficult. Personally, also, my wife was abroad, and I was supposed to pick my kids up, and they wouldn't let me out. And again, the allegations were, being in touch with a foreign agent, mm-hmm. which in general is something that most of us journalists, definitely those who are working in covering international issues. My phone was taken from me and still hasn't been given back to me, but there isn't even a warrant. They took it without a warrant, and I've since seen leaks from my phone, leaks from the interrogation in Israeli media, in Hebrew media, about the interrogation. And
you're saying here clearly it's not coming from my side; it's coming from the authorities.
Well, it can't come from my side because I don't have the phone, mm-hmm. and I couldn't have recorded anything, or my memory is not that amazing, and I also had no interest because those narratives were not necessarily so positive towards me. So there's a really and luckily I think it took a while, but I feel that I've received a lot of support from right and left.
But how do you look at that? The fact that these transcripts were leaked by authorities, probably.
It's very frustrating. I think it's a very big problem. It didn't begin with me.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, I'm sure it's not going to stop there.
You suddenly understand how other people go.
I understand what other people go through, but also I told them, when I saw they leaked, or they didn't even leak, they just published that, I was being interrogated. I said, I want to give you information in order for this, if my information is helpful, and I'll give you any information I have in order for you to be able to find the truth. And if someone did things that are illegal, then you could arrest them and do whatever you want. But I also said, you keep on leaking everything. So why should I trust you if I and give you this information? What?
At what point did you say that?
After I started understanding that things were being leaked.
And you got no answer and no response yet from the authorities about these leaks, right?
Nope.
Now, how do you look at the bigger picture? You're hoping that your story is coming to an end, but this Qatar gate, this whole issue is not going anywhere, right?
I definitely can't speak about the details of the interrogation or evidence that I was displayed during my time. 2 days of being interrogated for 12 hours almost. But it's not an invented story. There are issues here that are problematic. I don't know what is considered illegal or not. Even if we put legality aside, ethically, morally, nationally, security-wise, there are many elements here that are problematic and should be interrogated and should be looked into as much as possible. And those who broke the law or who violated many privacy or issues, etc., have to be prosecuted.
Finally, you're back home with your kids. What do you tell them when they ask you, Abba, where were you?
At the beginning, I said that I'm helping the police, and they're like, "Why can't you leave the house?" I was like, "Well, because my phone's broken, so I have to be close to the landline in case they're looking for me because I'm helping them, and the police are good people, and." Whatever. It was.
When you grow up, you'll explain the complexity.
Some of them are more into politics than others, even amongst twins. So.
It's a complex story.
Yeah, definitely.
Zvika Klein, Editor-in-Chief, Jerusalem Post. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Yoni.